This illustration begins with the middle game. Now, in this position, black plays the queen to b6, which is, according to uh, some annotations or comments, according to some masters, queen to b6 here is in the least inaccuracy or even a mistake. But the lesson to be learned here is that just because your opponent make a mistake, unless it is a blunder that you can capitalize on, if it's just a small error, make sure that it doesn't cause you to make a mistake. And you're going to know exactly what I mean as I walk you through the game. Queen to b6, a mistake. And because of this move, white decides to play the knight to a4, harassing the queen, which is also an inaccuracy. And as a result, queen to b4, rook takes d8, bishop takes d8, rook d1, knight d7, knight c5. Although it does look as if white can exploit black's back rank, black is a good defender. For example, bishop to f6. Now this is called creating an opportunity for your opponent to make a mistake. Now, white made a blunder by playing the queen to c7. And now, checkmate is unavoidable. And after king over, bishop to e5 with a discovered check. Now let's take the moves back. Okay, this is the starting position. Yes, queen to b6 is a mistake. But the move to be played by white here is not the knight to a4, but instead knight to e4. And white will certainly get better results after rook takes d1 check, rook takes d1, knight d7. Look at the position. Rook takes d7 and exchange sacrifice. Bishop takes d7 and bishop takes e7. This position is a lot better than the first one. Queen g1 check, king d2, bishop c6, pawn to b3, queen takes h2 and bishop to c5, queen h6, and white definitely has a good position.
In this position, black makes a bad trade. Rook takes e3 is a mistake, a big mistake. The move that black should have played was king to d6. Now white has access to those squares. White gains tempo on the knight and will also use both the king and the bishop to obtain a winning game. This is the good bishop versus the bad knight. You will see white maintain a strong grip in the center by playing the king to e4 and then on to f5, pressuring the knight, and now advances the d pawn. There isn't anything that black can do to save the pawn on f4, but again, white has bigger fish to fry. And you know what it is. It's called game over. In this position, black tries maneuvering the knight to e6 by playing the knight to h7. And from there, we'll go to f8. But bishop g4 is a menace. White just simply captures the knight on e6. And the pawn ending is hopeless for black. There is a background lesson in this example, and that is the king that is the more advanced up the board usually has the winning chances. And it's game over, and black is simply a boxer who's waiting for his head to hit the canvas. In this position, white demonstrates excellent technique, refusing to take the pawn on b6 that's not going anywhere, plays the bishop to e2 instead. Why? Because white has bigger fish to fry, and that bigger fish is defeating black by promoting the d-pawn. Game over. Now, as I stated before, avoiding bad trades is essential to chess growth. Bishop takes the knight on c5 is a bad trade. It yields black the initiative. The bishop is on an excellent diagonal. White tries to drive the bishop back and continues with the queenside attack. Not only does black have two centralized pawns that prove to be effective, but soon you're going to see black ambush white's king side with the heavy pieces. Pawn to b5 with the idea of disrupting black's queen side where the king sits. But after the pawn moves to e4, this opens the h2 to b8 diagonal. And now black makes the power move. Queen to g3, and the game is over. Checkmate is threatened on both g2 and f2. In chess, pawn breaks are vitally important. It's a way to get some action going, get some activity. Or how else are you going to gain space? But throughout the course of your studies, you have learned that pawns are played systematically. When to play for a pawn break and when to hold back. In this particular game, white will castle queenside, after which we'll have opposite wing castling. Although it is a common goal for black to try to get d5 in, this move may surprise you if you're not familiar with it, but pawn to b5, offering a pawn out of the opening. White castles queenside, and the game continues with knight g4, threatening to take on f2. Now we're going to go back and see what happens if white captures the pawn on b5. But before we do that, we're going to see why it is a good plan for black to advance the b pawn. This removes one of the e4 pawn's defenders, and you're going to see why shortly. The move knight b8 opens up the bishop on the a8 to h1 diagonal, and the pawn falls. And after queen to g2, black gets a beautiful position by following up with the move pawn on d6 to d5. And looking at the board, the knight has a beautiful post on the e4 square, supported by the d5 pawn. The pawn on b4 and the queen on a5 both have an eye on the c3 square. And this is of course in concert with the bishop on g7. Now after black plays the move pawn to b5, what happens if knight takes the pawn on b5? Again, this removes one of the defenders of the e4 pawn. This tactic is justifiable. Knight takes the pawn on e4, threatening to take the queen on d2. But after bishop takes e4, then black continues with bishop captures bishop on b2. And after queen b6, pawn to c4, the bishop drops back to g7. And black's got two beautifully placed bishops on the fianchetto, an active queen on b6, and the rooks are connected. In this game, black's plan, after the normal developing moves, is to play the queen to c7 and drop the queen back to b8. The idea is to protect the pawn that is on d6 along with the rook on d8. And after white plays the move pawn to c4, trying to get a good grip on the d5 square, black plays the pawn to d5. And after this, black gets a good game, with massive trades to follow. And now the queens will come off the board.
Okay, I'm going to leave you with one final example. Here you're playing the white side. It's a checkmate in 4 moves. Can you figure out the first move? Pause the video, I'll give you a couple seconds. Okay, the move is pawn to d5 forks the king and knight. Pawn to d7 forks the king and knight. That is a check. Rook takes d7, and after the recapture, c takes d7 check, followed by king takes d7. Now, what is your next move? Okay, the next move is bishop to a4 check. And after king d6, the only available square, then white is to find the last move that puts the nails in the coffin. Pause the video. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Okay, and that move is under promotes to the knight, which is checkmate. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned for my next video.